Hey there, everybody. This is Kaylee McMahon. Y'all know me, number one leading ladies podcast. What we do on this show is we focus on empowering women instead of tearing each other down. So we have a special guest today. I'm going to let her introduce herself. I won't do it justice. Go ahead, Ingrid.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Dr. Ingrid Murra. You can call me Ingrid. I'm an orthodontist and I run a company called Toothfront here in LA.
Very cool. So tell us a little bit about you.
So I guess work-wise, I'm an orthodontist by trade. Spent 20 years of my life becoming an orthodontist and basically realized when I was in residency that the world of orthodontics is crazy now that clear aligners are in the market. Most people don't know that you need an orthodontist. The reality is that you do. One in two people in the world now want to straighten their teeth and they don't know who to turn to, how much to pay, what high quality care looks like. And probably what got me to change to entrepreneurship as opposed to actually practicing as an orthodontist is seeing how many patients were getting hurt. So now I run this business to help patients get high quality care by empowering providers.
Okay, very cool. So I'll ask a couple of questions and like I said, if the conversation goes somewhere else, that's cool. So like I mentioned, what we want to do is we want to talk about other females that are empowering people, which it sounds like you do. And then obviously we want to tell your story and let our audience get a little bit more comfortable with what it looks like to actually make this thing called entrepreneurship happen. So one of the biggest things that I've learned is that a lot of people think from the outside looking in that it's you get time off and you get to be location free and you get to do what you want to do and structure things the way that you want to. You don't have a boss to answer to. And so this, this entrepreneurship thing must be amazing. And it's a big misconception that I see. And so really the reality that we'd like to kind of come into your virtual reality goggles on is what did it really take to make it? So for example, for me, taking out your first business on a credit card, going back to living with your parents, starting over again, and maybe even going into bankruptcy. Sometimes that's happened to people before too, their first startup that they tried or whatnot. But really the question is what did that look like for you on the journey from getting started at the very first day? What did that look like all the way to actually seeing traction where people were like, oh, this is a service that actually impacts my life. And now we have 100 sales a day. What did that journey look like?
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're asking this because there is a little bit of this misconception of like, I just started a business and suddenly I'm an entrepreneur and suddenly I don't have a boss and everything's great. Mine, frankly, was a 7-year journey. It started in 2015 when I identified the problem. I realized the way that orthodontics is practiced isn't right. Like this whole brick and mortar practice, braces, or offering Invisalign. When I practiced, I was offering Invisalign for $18,000. Why? Because I'm a Harvard trained orthodontist who was working in Manhattan. So between the name and the overhead, that's how much I was charging. Not dictated by me, but that's how much my boss was charging on behalf of my services. And patients aren't getting high quality care. That was number one, I identified the problem. It took a long time to figure out what it takes to run a business, how to build a business. And by the way, I still had my daytime job. I was like working realistically, I was working like 7 to 6 days a week, so that I can afford to live in New York, so that I can pay my student loans, so that I can fund all the costs that go into even kind of speculating what it means to run a business. Everything from building a brand deck, building a pitch deck, building a financial model, getting advisors on board who can kind of like represent me when you don't have a name out there. It takes a long time. So I would say idea started in 2015. I had no idea how I was going to go about it, but I basically was like, something's going to change. So I read the books, all the books people tell you, 0 to 1, like all the top 20 books out there, all the lists, they're good books. And like, you do have to read them to kind of understand like how to raise venture capital money, if that's a path that you want to pursue, how to run a business, how to hire, how to fire, how to manage. Like there's so much out there that you do need a little bit of the fundamental knowledge, but then you also just need to get started because and I would say you got to do it in parallel. Because as you actually operate, you realize maybe this is the wrong business model. That happened to us twice. We operated 2 business models that just didn't serve the market. too high of operating costs, too high of marketing costs, whatever it is. These are terms that back in 2015, I had no idea what they even were. What is an operating cost? What is a marketing cost? What are the marketing channels? You know, just quick story. I hired a marketer, you know, back in 2018. I was like, they're going to do everything for me. Ads, brand, the creative, copy. Like, lo and behold, now I realize like how far off I was. And so first raised venture capital money in 2019. We raised 1.2 million of pre-seed funding, all on a safe note. Had no idea what that meant, but I was like, you know, I read Venture Deals by Brad Feld that taught me how to raise venture capital money. Went to health tech conferences to start networking with investors. Iterated through 2 business models with that funding. Had to hire and fire so many people. I had no idea how to hire, how to hire people for the business at the stage that we were at, how to allocate equity. How to compensate them. Because none of us get taught how to hire and fire people, how to appropriate compensate people salary-wise, equity-wise. And so long story short, here I am 7 years later. We just raised our new round of venture capital funding led by Craft Ventures. We have the right team, thankfully. And we're just now hitting the ground running on building, adding value to our customers. We have demand. And so to answer your question, it took me 7 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I'm so proud of you that you're able to at least figure out how to even get going with the VC funding because, you know, for me, for example, I took an accelerator and I know that that's like a thing, right? But the part of the thing is being fearful of not being able to raise it, you know, and I've got all the decks and all the information, the traction and all that stuff. But, you know, but also we're not like a unicorn. So there's no like, I'm doing stuff a little different, but it's not innovative. So I'll just vouch for myself. I'll just say that like, there's just limited self thoughts, or like my own self-limiting thoughts have gotten my way. And you were able to raise, what was it? Over $1 million the first time?
Yeah, over the first time was like 1.2-ish. It was on a rolling note. Now we just raised 3.5. Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that.
To raise it and like you didn't have everything perfect. And guess what? Then you learn and then you get it perfect the next time or maybe the third time, whatever. But point is like if you don't, like you said, get going, like nothing will happen. And so you actually motivated me to like get going and do some more. So thank you for telling your story of what it really takes. You know what I mean? Fail forward. When it did, I've lost some businesses because of mistakes of kind of like, I'm definitely that person that will just like, okay, put my neck out there. Like, let's get going. And my neck gets chopped off. You know what I mean? Like, so in my situation where it got chopped off pretty bad, it took a while for me to emotionally heal from that and to financially, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But coming out of the second time, like saying, well, I'm going to iterate again, or I'm going to do better. What did, from those challenges, what were you able to learn or change the second go round? What were you able to learn is my question.
Well, listen, I think the biggest misconception is that you're not failing every single day. It's just about de-risking it. And I think like the biggest thing that I've learned is just being okay with failure. Like and also like everything's been like historicized. I don't even know if that's a word, but like Thomas Edison said, like I have not failed. I have learned 1,000 times. I'm going to butcher this, but like I've learned 1,000 times how it doesn't work. And that's how you should be looking at failures. I think to your point of like, it burned essentially. It's all about de-risking it. So if it means keeping your day job, like I think the biggest mistake that I've seen is people being like, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to quit my day job. In what world?
Yeah.
Like if, unless you're sitting on a pile of cash, you know what I mean? And like, if you are, that's incredible. But even so, that pile of cash will run out and you don't know how long it's going to take you to build that business. And so to me, the biggest thing is like, I was not able to quit my day job until even like 12 months after I raised venture capital. I was still working once a week as an orthodontist because the salary that you're able to pay yourself is nothing, you know, it's pennies. Like expectations are that you don't pay yourself like a living wage at like, you know, especially when you have a pre-seed round of hardly any. 1.2 sounds like a lot of money. It's not. It's not a lot of money, especially if you're not a purely SaaS tech company where you have like operating costs, infrastructure, more than just engineers who you need to hire. And so I would say like the biggest thing I've learned is to just not get emotional about the failures. Like the term failure should be every single day. You know, it should be, if you're not failing every single day, you're not doing it right. You're not taking enough risk. And you've got to do it in a way that you as a person are protected. Like you're protected so that like, you're not going to go into debt. You're not going to go, you know, like you're doing it in a way that can support you. And I think the second piece that I want to add that you mentioned about like accelerators, like it's the same thing that I experienced before, which is like you try to prep so much. And honestly, especially us women, like we think that we have to have it all figured out at first. Like that was me in like my podcasts and my books. Like you're at a certain And to kind of wrap up on the point that you made about accelerators, accelerators are just a different version of prep. Like if you just think about like prep versus execution, prep is like books, podcasts, accelerators, making lists of the things you need to do versus actually executing. It's all, and us as women, we try to prep too much is what I've noticed. And like, maybe I'm generalizing too much. I have 4 sisters, but this is what I've seen. Like we think that we need to be fully prepared. At the end of the day, we have the biggest skill set that you can learn is just doing, like prep less. Someone once told me like to-do lists are great. Once it gets beyond 3, you're not doing anything. You're just making a list. Like once you have 3, get going. Just start doing, start building.
Yeah, I'm like staring at my to-do list going,
And listen, we're all guilty of it. Like I did the same thing yesterday. I made a list of like 25 things just like on the plane. And I was like, but why did I do this? I know that I'm not going to get to it. I should have just been doing the things on my list.
Yeah. Well, so I'm glad to hear that you've been able to just go for it. You know, a lot of the times I think and be very transparent with our audience about what that looks like. You know what I mean? Because it's not all rainbows and sunshines and butterflies. But you know, every time that you fail at something or basically learn a lesson, then you have the opportunity to do it better the next time. And those that have achieved any kind of great success, it was never, ever, ever, ever their first, second, third time. So
thousandth time, like thousands. It's literally like people love to look at success cases. Like it is just an accumulation of losses until you reach a win. That's all it is.
100%. And so one of the things we really like to know is, what would you say has been your biggest win?
Learning how to hire, for sure. Like my whole life was like achieve and like figure out whatever it takes to achieve. But when it comes to building a company, it's so much bigger than you, and you need to learn how to hire the right people to achieve your vision. And learning how to hire and also put them on a path to execution where they're motivated, they know what their goals are, they're on deadlines, they're self-motivated. You know, I think you never want to be in a position in a small company where you're like micromanaging. If you're micromanaging, you've lost. And honestly, it's like, at that point, it's all, if it's not working out, like you just got to cut the cord, because it's not, it's a very specific kind of person who I would say is like less than 5% of the population, who is like self-motivated, is going to manage up, tell you what to do. And you should be hiring people who are telling you what to do. You want to hire people who are smarter than you, who can help you, because you don't know everything, you know what I mean? And so I think that hiring was like by far my biggest accomplishment.
Yeah. Would you expand on that a little bit for our audience as far as, I've learned that there are certain ways to figure out what someone is really, really good at, certain personality tests out there. Like I use Culture Index that helps me at least figure out what is their best quality, and then to kind of like not pay attention to the rest of the qualities, because I'm not trying to train something out of you. I'm trying to say, what is your good thing? And let's have that be what you focus on. But then as far as, are people, once they get past that facade of what the resume looks like and their personality test, and then they show up, and then, you gain some trust, and they fit the needs that you have, as far as whether it's like being paid equity or commission or salary, or however you work that out, all that, once it's worked out, then I still run into a position sometimes where being very clear on what are our key objectives and what are the milestones that make up, like each week or every other week, to make up that milestone. There's still some disconnect sometimes. So what is your methodology for hiring?
Yeah. I would say it's definitely not like one thing. Like, I think what I ended up doing is I created like a 5-page questionnaire. Everyone, to be clear, everyone that I'm hiring right now is like a founding team member who owns a part of the department or a department of the business who wants super growth. Like they want to eventually be VP or C-suite level. So I put them through a 5-page questionnaire to test like their values, what their goals are in life, like how they like to work, like personal questions, like really getting to know them, and I use that as a framework for like a third interview to like really get to know them as a person, and their strengths, their weaknesses. I use the Enneagram test. I think very specific roles require very specific Enneagram types. And so like your ops and your finance people, you probably want to be Enneagram 5. Like your salesperson, you probably want to be Enneagram 7. And there's like very specific, and I think I found Enneagram to be the best by far. And also hiring people who have done it before. I think at the beginning, I was just making bets of like, this is a really smart person. So like, this is your company. Like, why are you taking a bet on people? It's like, there's enough risks in the business. There's risks in the business model. There's risks in your growth strategy. Hire people who have done exactly what you need them to do. And make sure, like, test their references, make sure that they are really good at doing it. Like interview their bosses or CEOs, people who worked underneath them. I take reference checks very seriously, like to the point that I tell people, like, I'm not looking for a positive reference check. I've made them an offer. I want to know what can go wrong, because if there is something, poor communication style, like whatever it is, they'll be fired in the first 3 months. So you'll be sparing them and me by being fully transparent and forthright.
Yeah, 100%. That's great. That's great. Congratulations on figuring that one out, because that's huge. You know what I mean? Like, and then also rowing the boat. You know what I mean? Not micromanaging, but do you happen to on your team have someone that's an integrator or a chief operating officer type personality?
We have like our head of operations. We also have a chief of staff. And so I think one thing that I've figured out in the past couple of weeks is like my biggest value as an orthodontist is sales. Like I should be talking to every dentist in the country right now about why they should be partnering with us, as opposed to like offering this kind of like subpar product. Yeah. And so I'm having our chief of staff, basically like I'm in charge of putting together like what the goals are. Every person in the department puts together their OPRs or their KPIs. And then our chief of staff on like a daily basis is making sure that we're on track with hitting those goals.
Yeah, that's what I'm missing right now.
Okay, yeah, it's hard.
There's hope.
100%.
Well, Ingrid, thank you so much for doing such an amazing job at being so transparent and honest with like what it looks like, to be an entrepreneur, being a female entrepreneur, being the lead of the business, figuring out, failing forward, asking for help, getting those right people in place, right butts in the right seat. Because it is honestly, from my experience, it's pretty overwhelming going, I've got to do all of that.
Oh, yeah.
The mission, the vision, the hiring, the strategy, the exit plan. What is that? Like all the things like, so it's so good to hear that, like, look, it is overwhelming for everybody, and you just got to take it one bite at a time. and, you know, get going. It was a big message that I heard. So when you're learning, test it out at the same time while you're learning, you know, in real time.
Exactly.
Get it. But, you know, our audience here looks to also see themselves in other women. So for example, I find that, you know, if I can relate to somebody, then it's more motivating to me to be able to go after something that maybe I'm just writing down right now.
100%.
So another big reason why we're so grateful to have you on today. And thank you everybody who is listening to this, reading this later, watching this on YouTube. And please like and comment and share so that more women can see what it's actually like to make it in business and to actually see what it takes so that we can have more women stay in business long term and be able to stimulate the economy. Like, you know, only 4% or 6%, something crazy, of VC funds go to women-owned businesses. And so with us being more educated, we can fix that. So that's part of our mission. Ingrid, thank you for being on here today. And everyone that's listening and watching, we'll see you on another episode of Number One Leading Ladies.
Thank you.